Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are taking a look at another of these new Adventure Force dinosaur figures that were found at Walmart recently. Again, I want to say a huge thank you to John Seculo continuously in these videos because he is the reason I actually have these in my collection now, as he was able to go to his local Walmart, search them out for me, and acquire them because my area is just non-existent with these currently. But again, thank you to him for helping me out, as he pretty much always does. This figure is their Carnotaurus, and knowing me, you know I love my Carnotaurus, so I was really anticipating seeing this figure in person, and I will say it's actually quite nice. Not accurate, once again, by any means. It's nowhere near an accurate Carnotaurus, so there's a lot wrong with it as far as accuracy goes. But as far as kind of a really cool off-the-wall sort of a Carnotaurus figure, it's definitely quite nicely done as far as the detailing and its overall appearance. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Carnotaurus, you can see that primarily it's got a really beautiful look here kind of from the side. Of course, the horns are not exactly positioned correctly as they should be, but I feel like the appearance at first glance is really quite nicely done from the side. Really nice skin texture all over the head sculpt of the Carnotaurus as well. So you've got a beautiful sculpt as far as the minute detailing goes up here on the head sculpt of the Carnotaurus. Very nicely sculpted nostrils. You can see some beautiful detailing there around the eye with a yellowish coloration and a black pupil. If we turn it around to look at this side, the paintwork is a little inconsistent, you can see here, because on this side it's got a really nice dark kind of a reddish coloration for the body, but then once you get over here it's actually a lot lighter, and I don't know exactly why that is, but it's definitely a little bit of a downside as far as the paintwork goes. It's the first time I've seen a good bit of an inconsistency on the paintwork of these Adventure Force figures, so a little disheartening that that would happen on my favorite species of dinosaur, but I mean, it is what it is. But you can also see that the eye is a little sloppy as far as the paintwork over here, but not terrible. And you can actually get a pretty good idea of the detailing, I think, a little bit better on this side, just because the paint is a little bit lighter, aside from the lower jaw, which appears to be pretty dark. But for the most part, the actual head, you can see the detail quite nicely over here on this side. You can also see the jaw is articulated, and you can see the very nice detailing there of the skin flap on the inside of the mouth. Similar to every figure so far, it's kind of got its tongue sticking up out of the mouth a little bit there. The jaw is a little smoother, I will say. It's actually really smooth on this Carnotaurus in comparison to the previous figures. You can see the inside of the mouth there a little better on this one as well, as this mouth opens a bit wider than some of the previous figures has. The actual inside of the mouth, this is the first time we've seen one with a different coloration as well, as they've all kind of had like a very dark purple, and this time it's more like a brown actually, which is interesting, but it doesn't look bad at all. The teeth are pretty much painted in the same fashion that all of them have been so far, where the actual paint used looks kind of a little too thick, but it still looks pretty good at the same time. And you can see each tooth is sculpted individually, and even with having thicker paint, they don't look bad by any means. They still look pretty decent, and they're painted with kind of like an off-white, so there's a little bit of realism to the actual paint application on the teeth. You can see that the horns up here on the top of the head are painted with a black coloration, and they do look quite nice as far as the paintwork goes. There's no sloppiness or anything, not exactly accurate Carnotaurus horns, but again, even looking at the head sculpt here, you can see that head sculpt is way too thick to be a accurate Carnotaurus. But you can see again we have like kind of some ridges and stuff that run up here onto the head sculpt of the Carnotaurus, and then we have a nice row of ridges that runs right down along the center of the spine, and they're painted with a blackish coloration, and then pretty much your trademark Carnotaurus kind of scoots that run along the body as well, which is nice to see. Moving back here into the neck, you've got lots of really nice sculpt and detail as far as like skin wrinkles and skin detail going on in that region. You've got some more really nice detailing here on the underside, as well as kind of a nice sort of a darker wash for the underside of the throat. Some decent detail in this area, but nothing really to write home about. As we come back up here into the body, you can sort of make out the shoulder blade a little bit there. Nice small Carnotaurus arms, which look pretty decent for the most part. I am quite a fan of the fact that they've given it smaller arms like it should have. Really beautiful skin texture here in the stomach region. Very nice kind of like fine scales, I would say. You can kind of make out the rib cage as well. Beautiful skin wrinkles and skin folds going on down here in the stomach region. Once again, you can see that this arm is not articulated like the Dilophosaurus, but we again have articulation in another spot on this one. We have leg articulation, which is the first time we've seen that in these Adventure Force figures so far. Kind of a thicker type of a scaling up here on the back, more of like an armored type of a look to this Carnotaurus as these scoots run down the body. Very nice looking as far as that goes. Once we get to the leg, we have some beautiful muscle tone in both the thigh and calf, just like we've seen on every figure so far. We actually have an area right here that almost looks like a little slit in the skin, like almost like a wound on the Carnotaurus, which is nice to see. You can see kind of like some scoots that sort of run down the front of the leg down into the foot. It's been dry brushed with a nice blackish coloration to bring that detail out quite nicely, and you can see it's like a reddish orange type of a color, and then a little bit of yellow and everything mixed within, so there's some nice paint variation within the actual toes, and you can see that the claws are painted quite nicely with a grayish coloration, and the dew claw is actually present on the figure and painted, so that is definitely a huge plus. And then moving along here in the tail, you can see lots of really nice detailing in the back of the tail here as far as that skin texture goes. Beautiful detailing the whole way through. Very nice wash here again included on the underside, bringing all that detail out quite beautifully. And then we run out the length of this very nice looking Carnotaurus tail, which is actually in like a downward sort of a position, and then it turns out really nicely. I don't know how much I like the positioning of the tail on this, but I think it looks okay. There's actually almost like an abrupt spot, like it comes out nice and straight sort of, and then there's like a spot right here where it almost looks like the Carnotaurus has injured its tail, and it's kind of like bent, like it almost broke the tail a little bit right there, so maybe that's why its tail is hanging. Maybe it's just injured, who knows. But again, that's just something that I noticed right there. Random little things like that that I pick up on every so often. And one thing I will state is actually the entire body of this Carnotaurus is a little bit inconsistent. As you can see this side, the coloration is nice and dark. If we turn it around, the entire body is a little bit lighter on this side as opposed to the darker paint on the previous side. And now only the leg is darker, so that sticks out almost like a sore thumb. Really nice detailing here again, though, in the throat. Beautiful sculpt as far as like skin folding and everything going on. Very nice skin texturing. You have those scoots that kind of run down along the body once again. You can pick up on the rib cage a little better now that the paint isn't quite so dark. It's a little bit lighter. You have kind of like squiggly black lines all over the place, similar to what we had seen over here. But again, you can just see them a little better now that the paint's not as dark. The paint scheme is actually very reminiscent of the Dinosauria sideshow Carnotaurus, which is pretty interesting if you look at it on the opposing side anyway. Very similar to that dinosaur as far as the way they painted this. I don't know if that was the inspiration for this Carnotaurus or what, but it's definitely similar. You do have that nice small Carnotaurus arm over here, as well as the shoulder blade again. Very nice skin folding, skin wrinkling there in the stomach region. Beautiful, very nice scale work here in the stomach region, as well as kind of those osteoderms and scoots that run up here above the hip region of the Carnotaurus. The leg sculpt looks great on this side as well. Very nice muscle tone on both the calf and thigh. And then a nice foot sculpt again over here on this side with a very nice kind of dry brushing, but the dry brushing doesn't look perfect, just like it kind of didn't really look perfect over here, but it doesn't look bad either. Nicely painted nails. They are glossy, so they do shine fairly realistically. And then again, some more nice sculpt and detail up here in the tail as far as like lots of creasing and cracks and crevices throughout the tail, and they've given it a nice dark wash to bring that detail out quite beautifully. We see those ridges run along the tail and then kind of taper off right about here, and you do have that, again, that curve in the tail there, and you have that spot where it almost looks like the Carnotaurus has injured its tail and broken it a little bit, and that's why it kind of comes out nice and straight and then just drops a little bit there. Again, really nice looking for the most part as far as the fine detailing goes. In no way, shape, or form is it an accurate Carnotaurus. It's actually very far from an accurate Carnotaurus, but it's a pretty cool figure nonetheless, and I definitely quite like it. As far as a size goes on our Carnotaurus, from the tail to the head, you are looking at about 11.5 inches or about 29, maybe 29.5 centimeters. And then for a height, and I just hit the camera, you are looking at about 5.25 inches or about 13.5 centimeters. It's a little tough to tell from your vantage point, but that's about what it is. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack, Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon next to our Carnotaurus from Adventure Force. And just like the other figures so far in this line, you can see that next to these figures, it does sport some pretty darn impressive size and is quite large overall, as all of these figures have been so far. This is the fourth one now that we've reviewed, and each figure has been really quite large. And this Carnotaurus, once again, is no slouch in the size department, and hopefully you can see that here with these figures right next to it. So this Adventure Force Carnotaurus definitely is not the best Carnotaurus on the market, but it is a really cool figure. And considering this is made by Adventure Force, straight away you can't help but be impressed because, again, they have continued to deliver some pretty darn cool looking dinosaur figures with this new line that they just recently released. I think they call them like realistic dinosaurs or something on the tag at Walmart. So these realistic dinosaurs from Adventure Force are much more impressive than anything I've seen from them in the past, which they have a few kind of cool releases, but nothing that's even remotely close to these figures. Even though, again, as far as this Carnotaurus goes, it's very far from accurate, but it's still pretty cool looking as far as the overall appearance. I really like the paint scheme they've gone with on this. Again, being a demon with its appearance as far as like the horns and everything, you kind of tend to get this like reddish paint scheme on Carnotaurus quite often, especially in comparison to the Dinosauria's Sideshow version, which I feel like this was inspired from when it comes to the paintwork. But I actually think that that's a really good color scheme for Carnotaurus, and I think it works really well on this figure right here. There isn't too much as far as paint application on this one in comparison to some of the others, but what is included is definitely quite nicely done, and all looks pretty natural aside from the fact that there is some inconsistencies when it comes to how dark the paint looks on one side and how light the paint looks on the other side. But I'd imagine that's probably not a widespread issue and hopefully is just limited to mine, so I will again have to potentially pick one of these up. I actually want to repaint one, so if I can find one with a nicer paint scheme at some point in the future, I might actually repaint this one and then replace this one with the nicer painted version. But this one overall, still a really cool look. As far as the sculpt goes, it is very nicely detailed as far as the minute detailing goes. The feet are definitely a bit too large, which is a bit of an eyesore, I will say. But aside from that, I feel like, again, not speaking in an accuracy department, I feel like it's pretty fun looking for the most part, and a really cool looking Carnotaurus overall. Very nicely detailed, very nicely painted, and very nice articulation with the articulation in the legs this time as opposed to articulation in the arms or even the frill like we had with the Dilophosaurus, but we have the standard jaw articulation as well, which is something that every figure has had so far. So as far as this Carnotaurus goes from Adventure Force, it's definitely another really cool figure. Not my favorite so far. The Dilophosaurus is still my favorite, but another really nice looking figure from this line. So if you would like to pick this up, head to your local Walmart, as hopefully it should be there. If it's not now, it should be soon, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.